So who should we be looking at as the Final Four team set?
Well, let's start with Gonzaga. Gonzaga, the most efficient offense in the country. I'll tell you what, they got 3 front court guys. They dropped 60 the other day against St. Mary's. They got wins against at Arizona, RJ, Oregon, North Carolina. You're talking about a team with great length, extremely skilled. Corey Kispert can flat out knock down the 3. They defend you on the perimeter. Let me tell you something. Arizona could have beat you. Arizona could have beat a bad UCLA team. And then you got Seton Hall, Miles Powell, logo range, deep range, can beat you off the bounce. And not only can they make shots, but I'll tell you, this is an elite defensive team. They pressure you, they can turn you over, they protect the rim. Miles Powell's ability, and then they got McKnight. Quincy McKnight racks it, defends, they get out in transition, they change defenses. That's Final Four good. Seton Hall, then Kansas. Kansas got an elite point guard, Devin Dotson. Explosive in transition, can get downhill, pushes the ball in transition. And then up front, they got the immovable object. Udoka Azubuike. You play through him, you throw it to him, he's going to finish. This is a team that plays not good defense, great defense. They turn you over, they get in transition, and more importantly, that big fella right there, you play through him, you get a double team, he kicks it out, they knock down a 3. And then this Louisville team, Jordan Warren, he could be player of the year. 6'7", rebounds the ball, knocks down 3s. Obviously a tough matchup, but the addition of David Johnson, all right, as a freshman at 6'6" point guard, he solidified the point guard position. They've got 2 front court players. One, Malik Williams, is elite defender. Enoch can score it around the basket. Those 4 teams very easily can make it to the Final Four.
Just to recap, you had Gonzaga, Seton Hall, Kansas, and Louisville in your Final Four. Noticeably absent is Duke. And when asked about the ACC's underwhelming place in college basketball last week, Coach K had this to say about the state of the sport and the lack of leadership at the NCAA panel. He said, quote, "Do you see anybody coming out from the NCAA saying what our future is? What's our plan?" And by the way, who would say that? Collegiate NCAA football runs it big time. We don't do it. We don't do it. It's sad.
I find this fascinating, and those comments came right around the time of the Super Bowl, and so we didn't really have time to dive into it. But there was a time when college basketball was my favorite sport, and obviously there have been any number of changes to it. Players not staying as long has changed the dynamic. I don't know if it is sort of a Zion hangover effect, but it certainly feels like there has been less conversation around the sport this year than almost any that I can remember. And it begs the question, and Coach K is sort of articulating it, do we have a real problem, almost an existential problem, if you will, in college basketball right now?
Well, first of all, this season has been void of a dominant player, right, that defines the sport. So all of a sudden, it is a Zion hangover. But here's the problem with our sport, college basketball. We don't have a voice. We have a seat at the table with the NCAA, but we don't have a voice.
What does college that mean? Football, I saw that in your notes. What does it mean?
The National Association of Basketball Coaches, all right, has a leader, all right? He sits at the table when NCAA rules are made and discussed, but he doesn't have a voice. He doesn't use his voice. We need someone that is going to fight for college basketball.
For what?
And here's what we need to fight for. We need to shrink college basketball. You can't legislate for 353 schools because they all have different missions. They all have different agendas.
College basketball is lazy.
Duke doesn't have the same agenda as Princeton.
And they're old. College basketball is lazy and they're old. Let me say this. They've always had to adjust college football to like, okay, how are we going to determine a Final Four, BCS? They've always been trying to figure out the best way to bring everybody in. Well, the NCAA's always had the tournament. You had conference tournaments and then you had the NCAA tournament. So then they stepped back and was like, our job is done. The NCAA tournament is going to take care. It's going to generate the billions of dollars we need.
Yes.
Every year it's the most popular gambling thing, most watched sporting event on television. So they're like, our job is done. And that's where they set back. Then what did they do? They joined with the NBA, said players had to come for 1 year. Because they're like,
they didn't join with the NBA. That was an NBA rule.
That was an NBA rule, but it was together with the NCAA. We can say
that that was your players association.
I understand that, but they wanted players, older players wanted money. Point being is this, Greeny, and then I'll stop. What they want to do is they wanted to get players there, and then it started to backfire on them, and you've seen the interest in college basketball slowly drop ever since that rule got in place. That's why they're looking at changing.
Last year was one of the most watched years in the history of college basketball, so it hasn't declined.
It was one guy. It was 1 year.
But this year, and you know what? He's doing the same thing in the NBA, by the way.
Yes, because he was one player.
The same issues in the NBA. Here's the big thing. You got to understand. You can't legislate and make rules for 353 schools.
Agreed.
They do not have enough in common. There's not a commonality. What college basketball needs to do is separate themselves. If you want to be at the highest level of Division I, all right, you've got to fill this criteria. And now all of a sudden you have 150 schools. Then you legislate for those
that will destroy the NCAA tournament.
Well, what would it be? So just to be clear, college football has the Power Five. They are clearly delineated in some ways from everybody else. College basketball has more teams than that. And to Richard's point, one of the things that makes the NCAA tournament so great are these Cinderellas.
These other schools can join in that Power Five concept, like a Gonzaga or the Big East or other schools, but there's going to be a certain criteria that you need to fulfill to get into that club. And then all of a sudden you can make rules that basically has some commonality within the group. It's not just name, image, and likeness. You can create a scenario where you have an agenda that those people that fit the 150 schools as opposed to 353 schools, which is basically impossible. Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports and analysis, download the ESPN app and live streaming sports and premium content. Subscribe to ESPN+.